Welcome to the Membership Business Growth Podcast, the #1 podcast for martial arts and fitness business owners. We'll dive deep with industry legends to bring you insider secrets on marketing, sales, retention strategies, and life's balancing act. Get expert tips for business growth right here, right now on the Membership Business Growth Podcast. Let's kickstart the action with your host, Ron Sell.
All right, welcome to the Business Membership Growth Podcast. I'm Ron Sell, and I'm super excited because I got Michael Bank with us today. And Michael is a pretty awesome guy, and we're going to get into a story a little bit today and some good tips on growth for sure. But Michael Bank's been a friend of mine for forever, and school owner, and he married me. He was the minister in my marriage ceremony, which is awesome. Couldn't have picked a better person. He was perfect for doing that. So Michael, welcome, man. So glad that you're
thanks
here.
for having me.
Yeah. So you've had some pretty neat things happen in your life recently, and that is you sold your school.
Yep, I've been incredibly excited and blessed to develop my school to the point where we had a willing buyer. I was able to get what I wanted for it, and the buyer was 100% fully trained. He was my chief instructor. All the students, families were very comfortable with him, and just talked to him a couple days ago, and he had a great January. So he's incredibly excited to be in the business.
Oh, that's fantastic. So I want to talk about this a little bit. I want to kind of deep dive because I know, you can't be an instructor forever, right? I mean, you can't be a business owner forever. There comes a time in your life that you're going to want to move on to something else or retire. You're 40 years old and you just retired, legitimately retired. It's not like you're jumping into something new, but this has been your plan all along since you started your school, I think. Is that correct?
Yeah, for probably at least 10, 12 years for sure.
All right. So you wrote this down as a goal of yours, and you're like, what do I need to do to go down this path? So can you jump in?
Yeah.
Talk to us about that, what your thinking was. And
I've always been very good at figuring out how things worked, how systems work, how businesses worked. And, I've learned that, numbers are one of the most manipulatable things in the world if you understand how to work them. And for a long time, I had the goal of retiring at 45, and we'll get into in a little while why we made it happen at 40. But, I just knew that my goal in life wasn't to always be doing this. Although I love teaching, ran a successful school, have lots of black belts, have, people who still look up to me or reach out to me. I just knew that it wasn't something I wanted to do. A couple of years, I guess I'll start with kind of where I really started thinking about getting out of it was when I started doing coaching with Tony Robbins' organization.
okay.
And the very first call I had with his coach was, "What is your exit strategy?" And I got mad. I asked him, "How dare you ask me my exit strategy? I'm a martial artist. I'm a lifelong martial artist. This is what I know. This is what I do." But he talked to me and taught me a lot about how you can't have a successful business unless you have an exit plan one day. And it took a long time for that to fully resonate and marinate with me. But over time, I started planting those seeds. And then I started looking around and seeing that there are a lot of school owners in my town that are in their 70s still teaching every class. I was talking with one guy who he only runs schools and programs in after schools, and he looked at me and he said that he hopes he dies teaching a class. And I was like, "What's wrong with you, dude?" But I realized that's not my goal in life. I've had a lot of phenomenal ups and some bad downs in my life, and those have changed my sense of self and made me realize what's important in my life, and that is friendship and family and having adventure and creating as many memories in life as possible. And the martial arts world has given me a lot of those, but I've also accomplished far more in my own martial arts school than I ever thought I would. And there weren't a lot of goals within the business that really kept me motivated anymore.
Yeah, man, I understand. So what are some of the things that you did? So you decided to, hey, you're right. I'm going to have an exit strategy here and I'm going to sell this one day. So let's go back a few years. Like, what are some of the things that was your thoughts on what you had to do to prepare your business to be able to sell it one day.
Well, the first thing that I see so many people who, talk about in Facebook groups selling their school is that they forget the basics is making your school successful, making it something that people want to have. And then making it that parents want their kids to work for you, that people can have a vision of being successful in the martial arts business. My instructors unfortunately did not give me that vision, that opportunity. The guy who I earned my black belt from, who I love like a father, but he never paid an instructor more than minimum wage, so he never kept instructors for long. So I wanted to design somewhere that people actually wanted to work, and I wanted to make it, what's a real business. So when you start thinking about when a kid talks about working somewhere, and if it's a real business, what would a parent ask them? Well, does it have time off? Does it have benefits? And does it have, like healthcare benefits, and does it have retirement benefits? So over the years, I worked on learning about how all those things work, was able to set those up. And that allowed me to get the type of employee who might eventually be able to earn your business, take over your business. A lot of people just look for, getting whoever they can. And, a lot of martial arts schools look for someone who is in a rough time as an employee because they'll be very loyal, but that's not the type of person who is going to one day be in a position to buy your business.
Right on. So you're working with the right kind of person that would, you're thinking about him as a prospect to buy your business one day.
Yep. And, as someone, well-educated, private school raised kid from a, well-to-do family. He's been with me off and on for 20 years. I've always looked at, with any employee, is this someone who's going to, is this person just going to be someone to help me for a short period of time? Is this someone for a long-term instructor? Or is this someone who I might either want to sell the business to or give a piece of and partner with them? And I've always looked at it that way. Having these options, I've lost a lot of instructors to law school, med school, because I've gone for superstars. That's really helped the growth of the school instead of just someone looking for a job or, didn't know what else to do. So, decided to call the place that they took karate from 10 years ago and see if they'd offer them a job.
Right on. So what are the things that you did to prepare, your staff members to be able to run the school on their own? Did you do a lot of staff training or?
So, we've always had a lot of staff training. We've been a member of several different consulting organizations over the years, and I've never hid anything from my staff. They know the numbers. They know how they work. I explain everything to them, the expenses, how it comes in, how it works. Because if I want them to eventually take over, I want to see that I can trust them with it. And if you don't trust your staff to be able to tell them what you're doing, that's someone you don't want working for you.
Right. So you hid nothing. How much money the studio made, how much it was expenses. You hid nothing from your team?
Yep. Yeah. Anything they want to know was out there. We talk about, they're okay, great. We did 50,000 this month, but we also, just did these upgrades around the school. We just, hey, I just paid the $20,000 tax bill last month. Make sure they understand the ins and the outs of what's going on, that, when they hear these big numbers, they're just not thinking that I'm just walking around being super rich.
Right on. But you are super rich.
Yeah, that's on the other side. That's the investment side.
Because I know, didn't you buy your house when you were like 20 years old or something like that?
So the house I'm in is my second house that I bought at, I think, 29, which was my dream home. I bought my first house at 24, I believe.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty incredible that you and you did all from martial arts, right?
Yep. So I got out of the military at 23 and opened up my school, and that's all I've done since.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible what you've done. So, you just recently sold your school. Like, what's next for you? Like, what's your goals and dreams? Because, they say that you die like a few years after you retire and you're only 40. So we got to have something in the hopper, right?
Yeah. So, that's definitely something I put a lot of time in. And, part of one of the reasons that I did decide to retire early, that one of the things I kind of alluded to earlier, is my original instructor passed away 6 months after he sold the school.
Okay.
He was in his 60s in great shape, completely unexpected. But he only had a few months to live his life, and he was also the person that made me want to become successful when I sat down with him many, many years ago and said, had 2 pages of questions for him. And, one of the questions, only one I remember, was, how often have you had staff that you could rely on that you didn't feel like you had to be at school every day? And he looked at me and said, Mike, I hadn't had a 2-week vacation in 20 years. And that was when I decided that, hey, I had to figure out another way. I've been very blessed that, we've already got a trip planned pretty much for a week, every week for the entire year. I've got friends in the martial arts world and outside the martial arts world all over the country and the world that I'm very fortunate to get invited to. We're going to, my wife Kat and I are going to Brazil next month for Carlo Laborio's 7th degree black belt coral belt ceremony. We're actually talking about a trip to Korea with the Taekwondo group, so I'll have to see if I can find your father's statue while I'm out there.
Yes, sir. Yeah, my dad has a statue out there in Korea.
But yeah, just opportunities have always come my way. I constantly get invites because I'm very, I put up pictures and tell people about the crazy things that I do. And when someone wants to go and do something crazy and they want someone to do it with, they call me as someone that will do it with them. So, I want to spend some time and just enjoy and travel. I'm still a martial arts nerd. I'm doing jiu-jitsu 2 or 3 days a week. I want to get back into some of my karate and Krav Maga training as well. And then, I feel like, life has just been going so fast for a while. I'm looking forward to slowing down a little bit, building deep relationships with friends. I'm sure I'm going to help out some friends that are school owners and travel around. I'm sure I'll do some seminars as I travel, that kind of things as well, just to keep me sharp and keep the skills up that I have. But yeah, I want to help people. When I've done the exercise of your ideal day, one thing that has always popped up is finding some way to help someone. And if I've helped someone in some way, it's a much better day.
Absolutely, man. It gives you fuel, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's go back a little. Let's rewind our timeline here a little bit if we can. Tell me how you trained your staff, right? Like, what was the cadence? What did you guys, work on? Those types of things.
So, a lot of schools, go under the concept that somebody a staff member might have to learn the business first, or they might have to learn the floor first. Well, I wanted to encourage people to do whatever they wanted to do, whatever their strength was. I've seen some schools that if you can't do the business, they won't hire someone as an instructor, but then they lose out on some top-notch instructors. So I looked at, okay, my job is to figure out how, if somebody just wants to teach, to give them an opportunity to do that and make great money. Or, if you find someone who wants to do the business, to be able to teach them the business. And then, if they get interested in the other side, be able to have them help out with that as well. But, instructor training wise, I'm a big fan of more as caught than taught, as far as just having them on the floor with me, seeing the way that I've run the floor. But, I'm very quick to start giving them pieces of the class and, but give feedback. Most people are just say, all right, here you go and step away. If you have someone take over your floor, you need to be watching, at least one class a day and sit down and talk with them for months and months, and then still be constantly checking in. Even if I'm away, I had cameras at the school, so I'd be checking in. I'd even watch class if they didn't know I was there. And then, they hate it when I send them text messages with feedback on the class when I was out of town. But, when I looked at finding an amazing instructor wise, I looked at the exact same way I would look at how I want to train a student. If I can get somebody with a good attitude first, that's the first and foremost thing, is someone with a good attitude, someone who parents are going to look at that person and say, I want my kid to grow up to be like this person. That they're positive, that, they're someone who, is just a great role model in the community. So that's the first thing I look at, is getting that attitude. And you can't really teach that. I mean, you can tweak things, but someone is who they are. So I'd get somebody with a great attitude first. The second thing I'd look at is their conditioning. Are they in good shape? I don't want to hire, a 400-pound guy to be the example of self-discipline on my floor. So, I'd get folks on getting them in phenomenal shape. I'd, train them as a student. a lot of my instructors have come from students, but not all of them. I've brought them from outside as well, but train them to become a phenomenal martial artist and to love it. And then the final thing is the technique. The technique's the last piece of the pie when so many people think about that being first. But if you get someone with a great attitude that's in great shape, the technique's going to come super easy. This hit me like a ton of bricks one night. I had to find an instructor one night who lost his temper in sparring and went off on somebody, and I literally had to drag him off and out the door of my school and fire them. And I'm sure no one else on this podcast has seen anything like that. But,
my dad told me stories about that back in the 70s and 60s.
So I was that night, like 2 a.m. I'm tossing, turning. I'm pissed off. I don't know what I'm going to do. So I get up. I go over to my office. I pull up my Facebook. This is in the early Facebook days. And I look through every single person that's a friend in my town and said, who could teach a karate class if need be, in case of emergency? Who could I have that could cover a day of class, a week of class? Who could cover one of our satellite programs or something? And as I went through, I got shocked at how many people I wrote down that weren't even martial artists, but people who maybe had dance experience or had been a teacher and things like that, and realized that, hey, if they can do these things, I can teach them how to teach a karate class. You don't need someone with 40 years of experience to teach a white belt the first day how to throw a punch, and most of these guys with 40 years of experience still don't teach them how to tie the belt right. But
yeah, it's interesting. I have a similar experience. One day, a father and a son joined my martial arts program, and the dad was so excited to train with his son. But we typically did kids in their own class. We did it by ages, right? Ages and then level. But, the dad was just loving the idea that his kid was doing martial arts and he was doing martial arts. It was something that they could do together. And one night at the end of the adult class, he goes, hey, do you mind if I just come to my son's class, and I won't take the class, but I'll help out. And I told him, I'm like, well, I don't want you to be a distraction to the other kids. And he goes, I promise I won't butt in the way. I want to be around my kid. And I'm like, all right, yeah, come in on your next son's class. And he came in every class for a month. And I started noticing that he started just picking up how I was teaching by observing me. And I started seeing him make small corrections in the class. He was very respectful. He was very encouraging. And he was about an orange belt, which in our school was about 6 months into it or so, right? And a month later, I'm like, hey, man, why don't you take all the white belts and teach them? Because he just had a good way, because he cared about his son. He cared about the other kids in the class. And I'm like, why don't you just take over, the white belt class? And it was the single best thing I ever did. He became the white belt instructor. So when we enrolled somebody, they went to his class first. And he was an expert at being a white belt because he had just been one 6 months earlier. He knew what it was like. And he was also a good communicator, smile, created great rapport with people. And, the single biggest place that people usually drop out in martial arts school is at white belt level.
Yep.
I mean, I can look at data for 10 years and tell you, most people quit at white belt because they get discouraged,
at all.
Or they throw, you typically throw a white belt into a class and you go, good luck, buddy. Mm-hmm. Hope you make it, sink or swim. Yeah. And when we instituted him as a white belt instructor, his only goal was to get them good enough to feel comfortable in the white belt class. Mm-hmm. That was his, between the first trial lesson and the white belt class, his goal was just make them feel comfortable and teach them stuff. And he was only an orange belt, and he crushed it for us. He ended up becoming a black belt instructor, 5 years later, and but look at all that experience that he had ever since he was an orange belt. And I think we should look at some of our younger belts, maybe not kids, but the adults that can actually help other people. I think it's powerful. I know it for firsthand experience.
Yeah, there's a lot of studies that show that students who have a good kindergarten experience in school tend to do well the rest of their entire time in school. So I always like that mindset with our white belts of make sure that that first 100 days, that first few months of their experience was incredible to set the foundation for what they do.
Yeah, man, super super important and powerful, right?
Yeah,
yeah, I love that. My second best hire I ever had was a mom, and her daughter did. It's funny, just 10 years apart, but She was a mom, and she signed her and her daughter up. And her daughter, when she came to us, was super shy, didn't have any self-esteem, that kind of stuff. And she watched her daughter become a rock star because of our program. And one day she goes, hey, and she was in our program too. She's in the adult program. And one night she came up to me and says, I love this stuff so much, and I've seen such a difference in our family. Can I sell martial arts lessons for you? And I'm like, yeah, you can. We can always use people like that. And she was the best program director, enrollment director I ever had, because all she would do is look at people and say, this changes your life. And she didn't tell them how it changed their life. She just says, I know firsthand it changed my whole family's life. You should get involved. And people just said, okay, let's get involved. And then, she'd become the white belt instructor after that. And it was pretty neat. Man, I think you're onto something there, buddy. Find someone that's athletic, that has a great attitude. Train them.
Yep. Train, same thing, exact same on the business end, at the end of the day on the business, what's most important, if they can't do a good phone call, why they move on to something else. I see places want someone to, be enrolling people when they're not even trained on how to do a good phone call procedure. So, you give them the foundations, because each one of those steps builds onto the next of them.
Yeah, man. So just like you do in martial arts, you teach them the basics and then move to the next, and it just builds on each other. You do the same thing with staff training on the business end too, I guess, huh?
Yep. And have consistency, and, give them a goal, give them a vision of where they can be. I've always believed in, my main guys, paying them as much as I could, giving them the opportunity to make real money. And, although, staff's not supposed to talk about it, they do. And, when parents see that my staff drives nice cars, that they live a comfortable life, that they have a family, that they have kids, and that this is a real career, that brings us a much higher caliber of students. That, we teach at a couple of private schools, and I love when I was running the programs there, that I'd go in and kids will be drawing up pictures of what they want to be when they grow up. There'll always be a couple of my students drawing that they want to be a karate instructor when they grow
up. That's awesome. So because you took care of your people well, and they were able to live a good life, that also attracted better instructors and better students to your school, because they took it more serious. They're like, oh, this is a real business. This is not a part-time deal for you.
Yep. And parents seeing that people worked for me for long periods of time. And that they were happy. They enjoyed what they did. They took ownership. Just like with teaching students, you praise in public, correct in private. It's the exact same thing with your instructors. You never go and, correct an instructor in front of their students. You always build them up. You make them the man. You make them famous. I look at myself as being the principal of the school. I'm the behind the scenes person that keeps everything going.
Yeah, man, that's fantastic. How did you do staff trainings? Like, how did you teach, a staff member how to do something better? Can you give me like the breakdown of that, please?
We had manuals for everything, just like any real business should.
Systems, manuals, things that you could say, how do we open the school? And you had that written down. Is that right?
Yep. I've got I had many different manuals from all the different consulting organizations over the years. And, we went through everything, and just during every staff training, we would, just work on whatever area I had noticed seemed to be lacking, or the numbers showed that we were lacking on. But there's never a week that you should skip something. Many years ago, you told me about creating a 12-week rotating cycle of business training. So, we worked on putting together something very similar to that as well, of make sure that things are constantly getting retouched on, because, same thing with the front kick. If your students learn a front kick at white belt and you never touch it again, well, they're not going to be a black belt with a good front kick.
That's right, buddy. Yeah. So the way that I did staff training was, we would do just like rotating curriculum in martial arts, right? You taught your students a rotating curriculum. A lot of people do. A lot of great benefits for that. We won't get into that today. That's a 14-day discussion. Just kidding. But, we did the same thing with staff training. So we had 12 modules, let's say phone call, intro, sales, or enrollments, how to lead a pre-class and all of that, right? And we would just rotate through every 12 weeks, whether they were good at it or not. So a lot of people, I think martial arts school owners, they think, well, my staff is really good at this part, so we can skip that, but we never did. We just do it again because the foundation, the basics is what wins football games. The basics is what wins businesses, right?
Yep.
You're super good at it. Train on it anyways.
Yep. And then even the guys who work for me just doing business had to do the instructor training with my instructors as well. So that way they would at least understand the bridge and the connection between the two.
It's very important. It's very important. Like even in Spark, we do the same thing. Like, I want my sales guys to be on onboarding calls. I want my onboarding people to see what the tech support people are doing, right? Because we want them to understand how all these pieces fit together. That's how you develop teamwork.
Yep. And then, and then we looked at, so my wife Kat and I, well, not my new wife, but we were dating at the time. During COVID, we really decided to break down how to make the school attractive to sell. We started working on this several years back, and and we looked at, what are the types of people who want to teach martial arts? What's important to them? What's not important to them? And COVID was the best reset we ever had. There's been no time that schools could literally come back, change everything, and have a good reason to do it, and very low questioning of it. So Kat and I spent so much time breaking down everything. She was a huge part of the mastermind on this, so I'm not going to try and take full credit on it. But we really
she's right behind you, isn't she?
She'll be watching this later, so I'll make sure I get my brownie points. But so we looked at, if you even think about the instructors that you hire people that want to teach martial arts are usually nighttime people. They took this job because they want to work at night, not in the mornings. But so many schools have their instructors working Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night, and Saturday morning. Well, Friday night's the night that all their friends are out. They want to go out. So you always see, guess what day people called in sick the most often? So, we started, think about ideas like that and realize that, hey, let's do a master reset. And then, does somebody want to buy a business to work 6 days a weekend for the rest of their life? But especially if your ideal, person to buy your business is someone with kids, someone with a responsibility, and someone with kids doesn't want to be there every Saturday. They want to be able to go out some Friday nights, that kind of stuff. So we made our core studio 4 days a week. All of our curriculum classes are Monday through Thursday. And then we just had special events on Fridays, tournament team on Saturdays. It's everything that could be run by our part-time staff. So it got to the point where there's only, 1 or 2 times a month that my instructor would have to come in on a Friday or Saturday, for a special seminar or something like that, but gave them the ability that, hey, I can plan a long weekend with my family, that I can plan to have a date night, that that I can go to my kids' soccer games. I can do this. People don't think about, how, this is a lifestyle that, hey, just because this is what I've always seen in karate, why can't it change? Why can't we question that?
What I really love about you really cared about your team, and you really put some thought into, how do we make this business attractive so they actually enjoy their life and they can run a very successful business at the same time.
Yep. So, so that was huge. And then, as I started getting a little bit older instructors, people a little more mature in their life, I realized that, hey, they all want the same weeks off. Well, we decided that, we're going to completely close our school 4 weeks a year. So we decided that we're going to close the school the entire week for 4th of July, the entire week for Thanksgiving, because no one complains about us being closed Wednesday through Saturday. So why not add those 2 extra days and they could actually travel? Then Christmas and New Year's. But, what that allows is my full-time employees will get 6 weeks of paid vacation. 4 weeks I choose, 2 weeks they choose. What jobs nowadays give you 4 weeks of paid vacation?
Right on.
And that made my part-timers want to become full-timers to be able to get those benefits.
Were you nervous when you approached your student body and said, hey, we're closing 6 weeks or 4 weeks out of the year?
I kind of worked it. I played with different things for the year, but we never really made a big official announcement on it. We just kind of just started saying that we did it, but we started thinking about some of the verbiage we used in the sales process, things like that could cause conflicts. So instead of saying we do 2-month belt testing cycles, we say we do 8-week belt test cycles. Well, if 8 times 6 is 48 weeks, therefore we're giving everything we promised. We gave them 6 8-week belt cycles, and hey, there just happens to be 4 extra weeks in the year.
Right on.
So just making small little key changes, or if you do 3-month belt test cycles, call it 12 weeks instead of 3 months, and once again, you can close 4 weeks a year.
Right. Then you also probably pre-frame them when you enrolled them, right? You just not nonchalantly said, "Hey, by the way, we're closed these weeks."
Yeah. So we have it in there, and then even on our student agreements, it says that we do have things like extend time guarantees where if you miss time, we give it back. But we say but in there, I don't remember the exact verbiage, but we do say it's 4 weeks that are missed during curriculum and not weeks that were closed.
Yeah, makes sense, buddy. This is really great. So what would you say to the martial arts instructor out there that's like, "Hey, I also want to create an exit strategy, an exit plan in my business." What would you say to those guys? Like, what are the steps they should do to, get that started?
So first off, they need to know what their goal is. At the end of the day, for your exit strategy, if you are planning on retiring, you need to have the financial strategy that you don't need the income for the school. Most people
That's
are going
Yeah,
to
you can't just sell your school and live on nothing, right? You have to have a plan for that.
Yep. So then you need to look at how to develop the type of people that are going to want to do it. So as I was thinking about this years ago, one of my buddies who I grew up with fortunately became the vice president of the bank. So he literally sat me down and taught me the exact way that the SBA is going to look at loans for if the person who was taking over my school needed an SBA loan, to make sure that all the numbers in my school would qualify for them to be able to get a loan. And all the other small factors that they need. So I had to think of it as a business. So make sure you have great numbers. Make sure that you have strong contract value. That there is actually something to sell. Make sure you have nice equipment. I was very fortunate to buy my building at 25 years old. To buy a piece of commercial real estate, not really knowing what I was doing, but that building has more than doubled in value. I still own the building, so the person that bought my school from me is leasing that. So that's a big part of my strategy, is to be able to continue to get passive income on that. And people are going to give tons of different ways to assess your business, that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, it's worth what someone's willing to pay for it, and that's it.
Sure is. You're right.
So you have to make sure that it has massive value. So when my main instructor was making a great income, I want to say he made like $70,000 last year working for me, and he knew that when pulling myself and my wife out of the school, that all of our income, although he didn't know exactly what it was, he knew that would all get shifted to him. He knew that this would be a very quick return on investment. All the families were already very, very comfortable with him. But when I've seen a school get sold, just someone new comes in and says, "I'm the owner," that scares people.
Yeah, of course.
So you take your time, you make sure that people are very, very used to whoever you're selling it to. That over the past about 9 months since we got really serious on our plan to sell the business, both Kat and I stepped away and let him deal with more and more of the face-to-face for almost everything. So he got very used to dealing with every issue, and he had at that point in time to say, "Hey, let me check in with the boss and get back to you," and then we'd coach him through the scenario, and I'd take him through, "Hey, there's 4 different ways you could do this," and I'd talk him through all 4 options I could think of, and we'd go over the pros and cons, and then decide which one would be best for him, because it would probably be him dealing with any possible issues that could come up with it.
Oh man, that's smart. It's something I didn't even think about, is that you basically trained him how to be an owner now. So once he made the decision, yes, I'm gonna buy the school from you, this is what I want to do, and you guys worked out the financials of that, then you're like, all right, well, let's now start shifting you into actually being an owner, so that you didn't throw him out there like sink or swim.
Yep. So after we made the decision, I believe it was in March, that we were going to sell them the school. We'd been discussing before, but there's never anything finite. It was kind of a couple years back. Then back in March, we ended up. Kat's mom had a little health crisis. We had to go up to Ohio to take care of her. Fortunately, everything was okay. But as we're driving back, we're talking and saying, hey, your mom's 82, my mom's 78, my dad's 79. We're going to be dealing with stuff like this a lot more. And we really started talking about numbers and realized that hey, we could make the sale happen this year and not in 4 or 5 years like we had planned, and be in the position that we wanted to be in. So at that point, shortly thereafter, we went ahead, we hired another instructor to start taking over our head instructor's role on the floor, and had him start switching more to the office and learning that side of things. Although he still helped on the floor and had a lot of input on the floor, but we had him train the new chief instructor. So that way she was used to him working with her, not us. Because what we didn't want is a weird power dynamic of he said this thing, I said that thing. So I'd occasionally, just, hey, here's a couple thoughts I had from class, but I let him really be the one to train her, teach her exactly how he won the floor, so that she was connected more to him than to myself, because I knew that he was going to need to focus on the business side of things. He's been teaching for 20 plus years. He knows how to teach. So we let him do for, the last 9 months, he did almost every intro, almost every upgrade. We had him fully take over running belt testings, all those kinds of things. So all the families got used to him being the person that they went to for everything, and not us.
Man, that's fantastic. And I bet you if he called you tomorrow and said, hey, I got a question, I bet you would help him.
Oh yeah. I helped him out yesterday with some stuff. Yeah.
Awesome.
We've talked almost every day, since takeover, and, there's still, of course, lots of moving pieces with taking over school and all that. And, I helped him set up his LLC and helped find him an accountant, and, helped him get set up with the banks, and talked about, hey, let's get some credit cards. That way, the first month you can go ahead and pay for these things even before the income comes. Here's what the estimated income should be. Here's what billing is. Here's what you should expect from these things that were lined up, in the first month. And
man, that's sharp. So, I know this about you, but I wanted you to, the last thing for the day, but like, you couldn't have sold your school and retired at 40 years old without having a plan for the rest of your life when it comes to finances. And I know that you're awesome at creating budgets and investing money and all that kind of stuff. What's the first step that people should do when it comes to retirement planning, right? Like, where should they look to start investing some money so that when they're ready to retire, whether it's at 40 or whenever it is, they have something?
So the first step is going to be to take advantage of retirement plans that the government allows that give tax breaks, which most of those you can't get a hold of the money until 60. But for me to be able to retire at 40, I have those buckets already taken care of, and then I had to fill the buckets that are going to last me from 40 until 60. But the first thing that I would say to look at is take some major time to think about what you want your life to look like. And then that way you can figure out how much money you need. Most people very much overestimate how much money that they need in retirement because of, they slow down a little bit. They call it the retirement smile, that, the first year in retirement, their expenses might be very close to what it was in working, but it very quickly goes down. It's not till the very end of life that it starts going back up. But, you look at what are your priorities, so for me, traveling is, one of our big things. So I want to make sure that we had the income we needed to be able to do the traveling we wanted to, but also, I love going, visiting friends, staying with friends. So, I'm able to reduce a lot of expenses on that. I could look at teaching seminars when I go visit places to be able to offset some of the cost of that. Health insurance is kind of one of the biggest difficulty question marks that people need to look at, because it's just a mess with that right now. But we were able to look at some of the healthcare ministry options that were able to significantly reduce those, but then using a couple of other policies to augment where there's commonly holes in those policies. And make sure that you have some good buffers for, if something major in the house breaks, or if you need to buy a car all of a sudden. Make sure that you have ideas of how you're going to have some increase in income to make up for inflation. But, step one would be, Roth IRA or traditional IRA, whatever you qualify for personally. With the business, figure out whether a simple, a SEP, or a 401k makes the most sense within your business, based on number of employees, how much you want to invest, and and your long-term outlook. So I would fill up those buckets first, and then I would focus on reducing debt, paying down what you have. Very few people are able to retire with much debt. And then, analyze those numbers of what levels you feel comfortable with in the drawdown rates from your investments. Do you want your investments to still keep going up to be more conservative, or do you want to try and draw down and spend your last dollar the day you die? The importance of, do you want to leave money to your children, to your family, that kind of stuff. My biggest fear is having to go work at Walmart when I'm 75 years old as a greeter. Make sure that I don't put myself in a situation where I have to do that unless I want.
You'd be an excellent greeter at Walmart, brother. You would make those people's lives.
I keep smiling every aisle, but yeah.
That's exactly right. Oh man. Well, listen, this has been fantastic. And I really appreciate you taking the time to walk us through some of the lessons that you've learned in retiring at age 40. I'm going to do that too. I'm going to retire at age 40.
All right, let's make it happen.
I'm 11 years too late already. Well, yeah, man, thanks for spending time with us and, taking us through your journey and how you've done it and what your thinking process was. I think it's been very valuable.
Yeah. Honored to be here. And, if I can help out anyone, I enjoy talking business, talking shop. I'm hoping to still come and be able to crash some Spark events over the years, and
yes, sir,
you'll help people out.
That's right. Well, you're coming to my house. You're driving down here next week, so I'm excited to see you.
Yep, can't wait.
All right, brother. Have an amazing day. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Thanks for joining us on the Membership Business Growth Podcast. We hope you take what you learned and use it to propel your business to new heights. For more information, episodes, show notes, and to get social, hit us at membershipbusinessgrowth.com. Membershipbusinessgrowth.com. If you want to go deeper or send us comments, you can email ron@sparkmembership.com. We'll see you next week for another episode of the Membership Business Growth Podcast with Ron Sell. Thanks again for listening.